that insects and common household pests can be used to spread deadly diseases as a means of terrorist activity. From the use of mustard gas in World War I to Agent Orange in Vietnam, governments are continually experimenting with unconventional means to win on the battlefield and beyond. Both Germany and Japan had biological warfare divisions during World War II, and like scientists in their nuclear and rocket programs, foreign biological warfare experts were brought to the United States and the Soviet Union after the war so that we and the Soviets could learn their secrets.
Unfortunately, there are indications that someone, or even perhaps some government, is resorting once again to the threat of biological destruction.
It is now generally conceded that the anthrax spores that have been sent through the mail in the United States are the product of some highly sophisticated laboratory, probably in one of the wealthier nations, and quite likely right here in the United States. This is just the latest in a long list of biological inventions developed on a global scale for purposes of warfare or, more frighteningly, for population control. Unfortunately, once the genie is out of the bottle, there's no way to put it back. And so far, there's no way to confine it. Anthrax does exist in nature and normally doesn't affect humans except in very rare instances. Unfortunately, it can be manufactured in a laboratory. And that seems to be the kind of anthrax we're seeing. But what about the other global plagues? In spite of extensive propaganda to the contrary, neither the HIV virus nor the Ebola virus has yet been found to have a natural source. Where did they come from? These and other deadly viruses are the invention of biomedical research run amok. Not only is it impossible to control the spread of these invisible monsters, so far it has proven impossible to provide either prevention or an antidote. Just like the killer bees, once turned loose, it becomes your worst nightmare.
Biological warfare was and is considered so horrible that it has been banned by all civilized nations. Yet during the Gulf War, the specter was raised once again, and it's with us today in the threat of bioterrorism.
No nation has yet admitted to the deliberate use of biological agents against either military or civilian populations, but the idea that terrorists might do so remains a frightening prospect. And adding to the fear is the knowledge that it would be frighteningly easy to do. Hopefully the states that sponsor terrorism, and even the terrorists themselves, know that once these agents are loose, their own populations become targets. As we have already learned, insects and viruses do not respect borders or boundaries of any kind, and neither bombs, bullets, nor billions of dollars can halt the global devastation that will ensue.
The growing concerns about deadly insects have been associated by some people with recorded biblical passages and warnings. Is it possible that ancient religious texts have actually predicted the current alarming trend?
The Bible contains many passages dealing with plague-like infestation of various bugs and insects. Usually they are considered acts of divine intervention, while the precise cause and cure of these ancient plagues is a matter of one's belief and faith. The sheer volume of reference in the biblical text of these events is impressive. Along with earthquakes and famine, Luke 21 talks about pestilence as one of the fearful events and great signs from heaven. Bugs are sent by God as a plague in Exodus 8:16. When Moses' staff struck the earth, God sent out untold numbers of gnats and flies to swarm the Pharaoh's palace and all of Egypt. In Bible passages specifically dealing with the last days, or so-called end times, pestilences are prophesied to become common throughout the world. Whether or not one takes these events as a sign of the end times, the sheer volume and magnitude of what's taken place cannot be dismissed or ignored.
Some insect-borne diseases are still affecting only a relatively few victims, but the trend is alarming, and the numbers are only going up. The geographical areas of possible infection are getting larger every year, and no long-term or large-scale preventatives or cures are on the immediate horizon. Meanwhile, viruses of suspicious origin are also spreading, and in some parts of the world decimating entire populations. What can be done to reverse this trend? Sadly, no one knows for certain, but vigilance and awareness should be high on everyone's list. Coming up in part 2 of this show, the remarkably complex and beautiful configurations known as crop circles. Not only have this cryptic phenomena persisted for decades, but the questions now being raised cut to the very heart of the controversy. What exactly is the origin of these amazing formations, and who or what is responsible for making them? Two new chapters of this inquiry have begun to unfold in dramatic fashion. First, an amazing eyewitness account of a crop circle actually being formed. And second, the discovery of two crop circles that have a chilling connection to a message beamed into distant space by Earth scientists nearly 30 years ago. Even the most serious researchers of crop circles acknowledge that over the years, hoaxers have had their hands in many of the 10,000 total reported crop circles, probably since the days of the earliest discoveries. Is it possible, then, that solid scientific support for the claims of authenticity by crop circle investigators has finally and fully ended the debate?
How many hours it can take an unknown number of hoaxers to create one of the large and elaborate crop circles can be long debated, unless they want to let us in on their secrets. However, what they cannot replicate is some of the chemical and biological abnormalities that we've detected in some of the genuine crop circles. The classic evidence found in the grain of genuine crop circles includes the presence of elongated nodes, expulsion cavities, and germination abnormalities. These represent specific, irrefutable changes at a cellular level that cannot be forged by hoaxers stomping crops with wooden planks. The disbelievers and skeptics have never been able to explain away what science has indisputably and consistently proven.
Another puzzling aspect of the crop circle phenomenon has been the frequent appearance of lights above and near many of the sites. Glowing orbs would sometimes be present, and even more frequently, they would appear in photographs taken at the crop circle locations without having appeared to the naked eye. It is the lights that play an important role in the extraordinary experience of an eyewitness to one of the most remarkable recent crop circle experiences on record. Nancy Talbot is no novice to the world of crop circles. She is a co-founder of BLT, an investigative research team that includes biophysicist William C. Levengood, whose breakthrough scientific testing procedures have set the standard for evaluating plants affected by the crop circle phenomenon. Nancy Talbot's amazing and unique experience occurred during a research trip to Holland in the summer of 2001.
I was there on behalf of Dr. William Roll, the Parapsychological Services Institute, doing some geomagnetic and electromagnetic work at a site where we have a lot of crop circles and an individual who seems to anticipate their coming. I don't know if it's possible for a person to will a crop circle into being. There are many groups who have meditated on particular designs and later found them in the fields. But more interestingly are unconscious thoughts of crop circles where people have either driven by a hillside where there is no crop circle and they get an idea of what they'd like to see there, and the next day when they drive by, there it is.
On August 8th, Nancy went to visit Robert Vanderbroek, who lived near the city of Hoven.
The primary reason to be in southern Holland was to study more closely a young man there, his name is Robert, who for many years now has had dreams of crop circles occurring in his area, a situation which has often resulted in people going to the area, the field which he has seen in this dream, and there in fact will be a new crop circle.
For the first 10 days in Holland, Robert and Nancy visited a number of crop formations which had occurred in the area prior to her arrival. They were gathering the baseline data for Dr. Roll's research. During the nights, they bicycled out to the fields with a night vision camcorder and several flash cameras in order to carry out photographic experiments.
It has been discovered that very unusual light phenomena often appear on these photographs, balls of light, but sometimes flashes or dribs or drabs of light, which we don't think we can explain by any sort of camera malfunction or film glitch. On the night of the 20th, I had been in Holland by about 2 weeks by this time, and we had spent the days with the magnetometers out in the various crop circles that had occurred, taking measurements, and every night until 3 o'clock in the morning doing flash photography or other work in the crop circles. And I was exhausted. Robert wanted to know if we were going out again, and in disgust, I pretty much said, no, I'm going up to bed, and did so, leaving Robert down in the kitchen. Once I got upstairs, I pulled these curtains, thin, gauzy curtains in front of the windows, got into my nightgown, and got into bed to read for a while. Within about 3 minutes, I heard an intense, raucous bawling coming from some cows in a nearby barn.
But the cattle soon quieted down, and Nancy went back to her reading.
At about 3:10, the cattle started to bawl again, this time louder, clearly in distress. And I realized again that perhaps I should get up and go to the windows so that I could see whatever this was that was happening. Some intuition kept me in the bed. I didn't get up. I would say that maybe 3 minutes elapsed after that, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this brilliant, white, slightly bluish around the edges tube or column of light descended with enormous force down to the ground. It lit up my bedroom like daytime. The outside was so bright I could see the trees across the field. Then everything went quiet. It was dark. As if nothing had happened at all. I almost wasn't sure I'd seen it. But within another second, another tube, another column of light descended, again with this incredible force, extremely difficult to explain the energy that was involved there, came crashing down to the ground, and again, it lasted for a second or so, and then it went dark. By this time, I was starting to think of Robert, wondering if he was seeing the same thing downstairs, and before I could get out of the bed, a third column came crashing down, almost in exactly the same location. Again, the outside lit up, again, my room lit up. By now, I was yelling for Robert, who was downstairs in the kitchen, watching the same thing, and I could hear him yelling for me about the same event. Everybody immediately went to the windows at the back of the house to look up to see where these lights had come from, you know, what was up there, and there was absolutely nothing.
They were separated from the farmer's field by a fence and a deep irrigation ditch. Just over the fence, about 15 feet into the field, just barely visible in the darkness, was a new crop circle. Nancy's desire to experience the phenomenon in a more direct way was fulfilled beyond her wildest expectations. But what, in fact, had they just seen? There wasn't a hint as to where the light had come from, yet the tangible, physical result of the effect of the light was just a matter of a few yards away. What would a close-up inspection of the field in daylight reveal? Had they just witnessed the true source of authentic crop circles in action? The thought of sleep was completely gone as Nancy and Robert pointed their flashlights out into the field. There were no hoaxers anywhere about. No students with elaborate plans, no men from the local pub with a board attached to one foot, nothing. The question was, would they find the markers they had come to expect when true crop circles were formed?
I grabbed the flashlight, and as we got to the fence at the back of the house, I turned it on, and when I put it on the field, there, about 10, maybe 15 feet into the field, was a brand new 35-foot ellipse staring at us back from the dark. Half of the leaves were laid in one direction and half were laid in the other, and so we got an odd reflection, but we could clearly see this brand new crop circle in the string bean field. The next morning, when I got up, to my absolute amazement, I could see this brand new crop circle from the bed itself. We got up and immediately went to the circle, where we found a 35-foot long ellipse rather than a circle, off of which to the north went a long pathway and a crossbar like the capital letter T. The bean plants were swept counterclockwise along the northern edge of the ellipse and then laid in one continuous sweep all along the southern edge. The eastern and western edges of the ellipse were slightly squared off, ending in rows of beans on either side, and the standing plants in the rows were completely unaffected.
Examination of the plants showed them all to have been bent over at the base, and no broken or split stems were seen. There was no visible trauma to the stems or leaves or the very healthy-looking beans beneath them.
The night after the crop circle formed, Robert and I and a friend of his went back into the field to take some night flash photography. We had thought we might get some of these orbs or other figures, other light phenomena on the film. Every roll of film that we took that night had photographic anomalies. Some of them were large, semi-transparent orbs that seemed to be some distance away from us and the camera. Others were much smaller, much more dense, and very close to the people who were also in the shots, sometimes directly over their heads, sometimes down low next to the crop surface. Crop circle research involving a study of clay minerals in soils at crop circles indicates the presence, again, of energies which have been suggested by the plant work earlier on. One of the studies proposed now is an attempt to duplicate these energies, or at least some of them. And in talking to microwave and laser experts about setting up these experiments, they have voiced the opinion that the crop circles are probably the result of either military or industrial research that has either gone astray, an accident, so to speak, where the fields then get impacted with the energies, or that they're actually playing with the citizenry by bouncing these energies off of satellites or perhaps from high-flying, high-altitude aircraft. One of the scientists involved in the most recent soil project came to the opinion that we might be looking at a new energy, or an energy unknown to science at this point in time. And one of the most interesting ideas that I've come up with since this experience was the possibility that this energy, or energy complex, is actually interacting with human consciousness. The fact is that not 15 minutes after I had stated the disgust and the frustration over the elusiveness of the phenomenon, the difficulty in studying it, these tubes of light and the circle appeared.